I'm Chris, you're watching FRAG-MENTAL, thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about Navitus Parfums. Stay tuned. If you didn't know, the man behind Navitus Parfums is Stephen, who has the YouTube channel Red Lessons. Last year, Stephen launched Navitus Parfums. There were 7 fragrances as part of the initial launch. He has since released newer fragrances as part of the brand, which I've smelled, and they're very nice. But a few weeks ago, Stephen very kindly sent me a discovery set of the initial 7 releases, so I've had these for a few weeks now. In this video, I'm going to go through each of these fragrances. I'm going to try to explain to you how these fragrances smell and how I feel about them. And then at the end of the video, I'm just going to talk generally a little bit about Navitus Parfums and what I think of the house. First thing I want to say, the presentation of this discovery set is first rate. It comes in a really nicely textured box. It tells you the name of the house and all the fragrances that are inside. And then it's a magnetic lid here that just flips open, and then the fragrances are all nicely lined up in there, and each one is named above it. I think it's a classy presentation, particularly for a discovery set, which sometimes for brands can be an afterthought. This certainly isn't. You can tell that there's even a lot of time and design gone into how this discovery set looks. So really like that. Okay, let's start talking about the fragrances. The first one in this discovery set is called Novice. The perfumer behind this is Christian Carbonell, so you know, one of the best perfumers in the world. And the way that I would describe this one is fresh, clean, a little bit soapy, very classical smelling. It's along the lines of something like Mugler cologne, although I think it is better quality than that. Also along the lines of Xerjoff's Neo. Amongst other notes, ones that stand out to me are vetiver and neroli. It's a beautiful, clean smelling fragrance. I think the presence of juniper also in here adds a slightly aromatic quality, but a sharp-edged cleanliness. I'd describe it as having a bitterness as well. It's not a sweet fragrance, and I'm going to be honest, this type of DNA that you find in fresh fragrances isn't one that I naturally gravitate towards. I enjoy it, it's just not as much of a preference to me as fresher fragrances that have a little bit more sweetness and perhaps a little bit more depth. I'd say this is quite a light, thin fragrance. Having said that, when I went to London and I met Stephen there, I also met Dan, aka Mr. Smelly, and he was wearing this fragrance, and I appreciated it in a different way, smelling it off someone else. It smelled great, Dan was carrying it off perfectly, and it makes you reappraise a fragrance. I had a similar experience actually with Creed Viking. I initially did enjoy it, but then I smelled it off my dad. I got caught in my dad's sillage trail and it made me love it even more. So sometimes it's great to smell something off someone else before you fully make your mind up. So I enjoy this, I would absolutely wear it, but out of the ones in this line, it isn't my favourite, but I'll talk about those shortly. If you like this style of fragrance, it is high quality, it's really well done. It's a fragrance that I think will work fantastically well in the summer. Gives you that clean, fresh, gentlemanly, masculine feel. You'll possibly have smelt fragrances similar to this. It is a style that I think is quite popular, so it's not really reinventing the wheel. But if you just want to go out there and wear a fragrance that smells clean and masculine, and you don't really want to take over a room, you're not in the mood to make a big statement, then this fragrance is really nicely put together. Next, I'm going to talk about Intimus. This one is sweeter and richer, so definitely more up my street. What we get here is a lovely, bright, sparkling vanilla fragrance. What I like about this one is that even though it's bright, it also has depth to it as well, so it's quite an interesting fragrance. There's some woods and patchouli in here which are just giving some structure, so you've got this lovely kind of bright sparkliness sitting on top of warming vanilla and woods. So this to me is a really great composition. I definitely say that this is very versatile. I think you could wear this all year round. I would say it's unisex. I think it would smell equally as well on a woman as it would on a man. To me, this would work really well as a date night fragrance. It's in the name, isn't it? Intimus. It just implies that it works well in those situations. But as I said, it's very versatile. You can wear this whenever you want. So even though this is sweet and it has a nice richness to it, it's never too heavy. It's never too cloying or sweet. It just is really nicely balanced. I think it's quite an elegant composition, a very classily done vanilla. Really enjoy Intimus. The next one is Primus. I have a bottle of this one, so it gives me an opportunity to show you close up the presentation. So let's just zoom in on the bottle quickly there. It's got some citrus and woods and a really nice green mango accord in this. It's fresh and bright like Navitus, but it's sweeter than that one and it has more depth, so it's a little bit more to my liking. I really enjoy this. If I was going to compare this to another fragrance to give you an idea of what this one is doing, I would say something like Roger's Elysium. It doesn't smell the same as that, but it's in a similar category. It sparkles. It's a lovely bright citrus fragrance, but I also get a little bit of damp earthiness in the background there, tantalizing you. It could be the patchouli, it could be the oak moss, I'm not sure, but it's a lovely composition. So it's not just all sparkly brightness, it's got some depth to it, and it's got an assertive quality. So it's more assertive to me than Navitus, a bit more of a statement maker. If Navitus was a classical, fresh smelling masculine fragrance, this is a modern, fresh smelling masculine fragrance. I'd say it's probably the most versatile fragrance in the whole of the Navitus lineup. It's got that really nicely balanced composition of brightness and depth, which just makes it work well all year round. I think you can carry this off as well in the winter as you could do in the summer and the transitional seasons as well. So I find this to be refreshing, invigorating, gentlemanly. Really enjoy Primus. The next one is Solutio, and this is my joint favourite. This is a really nice gourmand style fragrance balanced with a dry spiciness. So the gourmandish notes in here are, there's a toffee apple accord, there's caramel, cinnamon, chocolate. Despite having these gourmand notes, it's never too sweet or cloying at all because it's balanced with this dry spiciness, and also there's a bit of a green undertone to this as well, just a hint of it. It doesn't overtake the fragrance, but it just sits really nicely underneath these sweeter notes. It might be the oak moss giving this slight kind of green earthy accord. It just works so well. This is a sweet modern fragrance that is addictive. It's also beast mode and a bit of a compliment getter. My other favourite is called Virtus, which is the one I'm going to talk about next. I'd say this is probably the sweetest of the fragrances in the Navitus lineup. It's got fruits and spices, honey and tobacco. This is along the lines of something like Parfum de Marly's Carlisle or Mancera's Red Tobacco, so that sweet fruitiness mixed with the honey and the tobacco. I'd say this is fruitier than those fragrances though. We get lovely mango in this and fig as well, which just works so well with that tobacco and honey accord. This is a DNA right up my street. Exactly the type of fragrance that I tend to gravitate towards. Sweet, tobacco, big performance. Again, this is another beast mode performing fragrance, and it's got structure as well. It's got depth. So I love sweetness in fragrances, but I do like it to be balanced out with some other notes as well, so the sweetness doesn't get carried away and become too cloying. This is a very smooth, classy blend. Personally, I would wear this all year round. I'd probably go easier on the trigger if I was in the summer. I think seasons for most people, if you wear your fragrances seasonally, then I think probably autumn and winter would be the best ones for this. If you wear your fragrances seasonally, then I think probably autumn and winter you would find this one would work best. I love Virtus. This is a sweet tobacco fragrance that is just very, very easy to love. The next one is the first of two oud fragrances. This one is called Oud Imperium, and I would describe this one as a sweet, woody scent. It's got a lovely fruity character to it. There's some white florals in the heart of this, so the white florals are giving this indolic accord, and I think the white florals combined with the fruitiness give it almost like a tropical exotic fruit type of feel, but then that's really nicely balanced out with the base of this fragrance where we've got amber, sandalwood and tonka bean, so those notes are giving us sweetness and depth. Initially, when I smelled this off the strip, the oud was quite prominent and I was thinking it was going to be a little bit too much for me, but when I wore this on skin, it just came to life. It really smoothed out and settled down, and it became this wonderful, sweet, fruity, woody scent. So I'm really impressed with Oud Imperium. If you're not into oud, I think you'd be okay with this one. If you've never tried oud and you're thinking of getting into it, I think this would be a good accessible oud fragrance to get you started. So yeah, I'm very impressed with Oud Imperium, so much so that I used up all my sample. It's all gone. but I enjoyed it while it lasted. The second oud I'm going to talk about, and the last from this line of fragrances, is called Oud Luxuria. So this is a much heavier fragrance. This is based around a classical rose oud accord, which I'm going to be honest and say there's something about rose oud that, whilst I don't hate it, again, it's not just something I naturally gravitate towards. Maybe it's something I'll grow into as I just continue smelling more fragrances, because I know a lot of people do love the rose oud. I find the oud in here is definitely a little more animalic and a little more noticeable than in the previous oud fragrance. So yeah, this one, not really my cup of tea, although I can appreciate the quality. It smells rich, it smells smooth, it smells natural, really nicely blended fragrance. So if you're into your rose ouds, then definitely Oud Luxuria is one that you might want to look at. So overall, I'm really impressed with the scents in this line, and of the new ones that I've not talked about in this video that I had smelled. You can see a video on Stephen's channel where I was smelling those for the first time. Really impressed with those. Overall, I think the house is great. I think there's a lot of care and attention and thought gone into putting this line of fragrances out. I believe Stephen is working with an investor, which has allowed him to come out with such a great line of fragrances at that quality, not only in terms of the scents themselves, but in terms of the presentations as well. And I know that Stephen has worked hard on this line of fragrances. He's traveled around Europe and he's met the perfumers, some of the biggest perfumers in the world: Christian Carbonell, Jorge Lee, Bertrand Duchefort. So no expense has been spared in terms of the perfumers of this line. When I met Stephen in London, he'd been traveling around different places in Europe, meeting the perfumers face to face and chatting with them about future projects. He made videos on those, so you can go along to his channel and see him chatting to the perfumers, which is really interesting. So he's passionate about this company, he's really invested, he's working hard, he's very much involved in the briefs of the fragrances and in working with the perfumers. So I know that Stephen is very proud of this brand and what he's put out, and I think he should be. I think he's done a really good job. I am aware that if you're a YouTuber and you want to come out with a fragrance or a line of fragrances, there is going to be, from some people, not everyone, there is a lot of support, but some people want to jump on you with negativity. There's accusations of, oh, another YouTuber, you're just doing it to exploit your subscribers, to make money off your poor subscribers. But let's just think about this for a little bit. If you're a YouTuber, you're passionate about fragrances. If you're a YouTuber about fragrances, there is a passion there. Why is that different to anyone else who has a passion for fragrances and wants to come out with their own fragrance? I think just because someone's a YouTuber doesn't necessarily mean that people have to jump on them. I think maybe it's because they're in the public eye more that this happens and it attracts this type of people. But I really don't get the negativity. I myself am bringing out a fragrance. I'm working with Aaron Terence Hughes. We're collaborating on that. I'm loving the process. And every now and then, every video I make on that, there's always someone that will say something like, oh, unsubscribing, another YouTuber bringing out a fragrance, I'm sick of them. But let's judge the fragrances. Let's not judge the YouTuber and the fact that they're releasing a fragrance. Let's just see what the fragrances are like. And in the case of Dan's fragrance, aka Mr. Smelly, his fragrance Gravitas is wonderful. And Stephen's line here, Navitus Parfums, I also think are wonderful. So let's judge it on the fragrances. And if the fragrances aren't to our liking, because not all of them will be, then that's absolutely fine. We move on and we try something else. But I don't really understand the negativity around it. Speaking of negativity, we can't not address the elephant in the room, which is the bottles. This is Roger Parfums Elysium Parfum Cologne, and this is Primus from Navitus Parfums. Instantly, when Stephen brought out Navitus, he was criticised for how similar they looked to the Roger Parfums fragrances, and yeah, they look quite similar. They're not the same. Different dimensions in your hand. The bottles are different shapes, they're different thicknesses, they've got different caps, they've got different atomizers. They're both a shade of blue, but not the same shade of blue. And they have gold writing on the front. So yeah, you can't deny there are similarities. So what? Does that trigger you? Does it trigger you that one fragrance brand has a bottle similar to another fragrance brand? It wouldn't be the first time. If it does trigger you, if it upsets you, then honestly, I would love to hear why it upsets you so much. If it bothers you and you feel like leaving me a constructive comment explaining why it bothers you so much, then honestly, I would really love to hear, because, you know, this juice is good, this juice is good, this bottle's good, this bottle's good. Would it really be a problem for you considering a fragrance house because of the bottle? Really? Personally, it doesn't for me. I have no problem with that. I'm assuming it's a minority, but if it really does upset you that much, then maybe ask yourself why. Why does it upset you that much? Because at the end of the day, it's the juice that counts. And if the juice is good, I'm happy. The other thing that I know has been talked about with Navitus is that the fragrances smell similar to other fragrances. Again, you know, there's only so many notes and so many combinations of notes out there, and often fragrances will smell similar to other fragrances, but it's the nuances, it's the blends that set them apart and give them different characters. You are going to find similar fragrances, but it does not mean that they're copies or clones at all. So there we go, those are my honest opinions on Navitus Parfums. I'm sure a few of you out there may think my opinion has been swayed because I know Stephen, I've done videos with Stephen, but I've met him and I've seen how hard he's worked on the brand. I've seen how much time he's invested into this and how much passion he's invested. So these are absolutely my honest opinions. Overall, I think it's a great house. Some I prefer over others, but I think the quality in general is very, very good. Worth checking out. So let me know your thoughts on Navitus. If they differ to mine, that's okay. I can respect that, but let's be constructive in the comments. And if you don't feel like you can leave a nice comment or a constructive comment, then probably better to not leave one at all, because we like positivity on this channel. Okay folks, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, keep tuning into FM and keep smelling good.